How far would you go to save someone you love? Would you be willing to sprint all over town at top speed? Would you be willing to rob a bank or a grocery store? Would you be willing to talk to a father who tells you he's leaving both you and your mother behind for his mistress? Well, Lola sure is willing to do whatever she has to do to save Manny in Run Lola Run. This woman is going on pure adrenaline. Want to know what could have helped her get a buzz to get through the whole ordeal? Do ya? It's caffeine. Of course, our sponsor, Spark Plug Coffee, offers half calf and decaf too, but that would do Lola no good. She can't order Spark Plug in Germany, but if this fictional character was willing to move to North America, then she could get the freshest, fairly traded, premium Arabica beans in Canada. There's a wide assortment of blends and roasts on the menu, including rotating seasonal blends. And if Lola made her residence in either the US or in our native land of Canada, she'd get any order she makes in a week, or maybe less. Psst, Lola, if you moved to our country, you wouldn't even have to pay for shipping. She and your real-life human beings listening right now would be wise to become a member of Sparkplug's Autopilot Coffee Club. Perks and great deals are available to members and you'll save money on every order, but you can also quit or even just pause anytime you might need to. Customize to get your orders when it suits you. This is no bogus, oppressive Coffee of the Month club. Looking for some website information? Theirs is sparkplug.coffee/HYES. I'll say it again, sparkplug.coffee/HYES. Our very own HYES promo code in the right box saves you 20%. One time only, but you could use that extra money in your pocket if you need to scratch together enough cash to save a loved one's life. Well, Matney needs some saving. Let's talk about how that goes down in this flick. Bev, play us in.
And action! Have you ever seen
Run Lola Run? Guten Tag, Fräuleins and gentlemen, and thank you for joining us for the 605th podcasting adventure here on Have You Ever Seen? What we do is post spoiler-drenched reviews of classic movies every Monday. I'm the frantic sprinter who would never get a stomach tattoo, mostly because the tattooist wouldn't have enough ink to tat up my stomach, Ryan Ellis. And here's the techno lady who puts her chips on 20 and lets it ride, my wife, Bev.
That's me.
All right, the coming attractions opinion question for this week's film, Run Lola Run. Ever since her breakout in this film 25 years ago, Franka Potente has gone on to have a pretty good career. She went on to work with acclaimed directors like Todd Solondz and Steven Soderbergh, and several more times with TomTykwer. I think that's how you say his name. That's what I'm going to say today, Tykwer. I put in the Blu-ray to hear him say in the commentary. I played it back many times. I heard Tykwer. Anyway, she was also quite wonderful in the first two Bourne films, meaning, of course, Franka Potente. But there's another film that starts with B that I like her in even more than I do those two Bourne films. What do you think that film is?
Well, I know that you love her performance in Blow.
Mm-hmm. Penelope Cruz is the wife for a lot of the film, and she's very shrill and annoying in that movie, but Potente, so much soul like she has in this, I guess. Depp is good in the film, but she, Potente, and Ray Liotta are the ones that always stood out to me. All right, well, TomTykwer's Lola Rent was released in Germany and was shown at plenty of festivals throughout 1998, but came to us North Americans, courtesy Sony Pictures Classics 25 years ago in June 1999, and it appears to have turned out to be quite a success at the box office. Cool movies that get into the zeitgeist often are. But Bev, this cool-ass movie is a quarter of a century old now, so please remind us what it's about and give us a skinny on Run Lola Run.
Franka Potente is Lola, a scrappy young Berliner who has 20 minutes to get her hands on 100,000 marks, or her boyfriend Manny will get killed.
Manny!
She runs to her dad, who lets her down, runs to Manny, who has given up on her and is robbing a grocery store, helps him with the robbery, and gets killed by a cop. No good. Start over. Lola runs to her dad, who lets her down, so she robs the bank her dad works at. She reaches Manny in time this time, but as he's running to meet her, he gets struck and killed by an ambulance. Blast. Let's try this again. Lola misses her dad entirely this time, and instead goes to a casino and plays roulette, where, with the help of God, maybe? And a scream, maybe? She wins twice in a row and secures the money just as Manny has found his own solution to the problem. So win, win, win.
She let it ride. Or, in a nutshell, Gambler's big winnings at roulette are definitely going towards her boyfriend's future screw-ups. He's such a screw-up.
Yeah, he's such a dip.
Ronnie might be happy with him on this job, but he's going to mess it up maybe even tomorrow, maybe even later that day. And it's a pretty simple thing. Bring this bag of money to me at this time of day.
I have my own nutshell.
Go ahead.
Run, Lola, run!
No, I'm the Forrest Gump voice, right?
I can't believe you didn't do it. I was sure you beat me to it.
I didn't think of that. I love going back to the Forrest Gump well, but I didn't this time. But you did, at least. All right, the numbers in this film are pretty impressive. There aren't that many to talk about, but we do, of course, always have Rotten Tomatoes numbers, and they are 93% positive reviews on Rotten Tomatoes, 84 fresh, only 6 rotten. The average is 7.9 out of 10, and 90% of audiences. TomTykwer's movies tend to do pretty well on Rotten Tomatoes. The International and Perfume, that has a subtitle, I forget what it is, are splats, but almost everything else he's been involved with, even, never mind just the ones he directed, are fresh tomatoes, including Cloud Atlas.
I loved Perfume. I've always been surprised that people didn't like that movie.
I don't remember it at all.
Oh, I really loved it.
This was 140th at the 1999 U.S. box office. The Sixth Sense was number 2. The Matrix was number 5. Of course, the Wachowskis and TomTykwer worked together several times in the future. And then the span of the same year had 2 of the cooler movies of the entire year. And The Iron Giant, which we recently covered, was 79th. We've covered Sixth Sense and Matrix also, and many others from 1999. It was nominated for dozens of awards and won some, but got no Oscar nominations. Maybe the music and the editing were both worthy, I would say. The editing is crazy, but it really does work in this movie. And as you went through your description, I thought, which I probably should have thought of in the first place, this has a video game feel to it.
Oh, yeah.
You put in your quarter and you get your new life.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's the main inspo for the film. We talked about this a little bit when we covered Edge of Tomorrow. You die, you go back to the save point, you use the skills that you learned in the last round to get a little bit further in this one until you level up.
Do you think she's aware, as Cruz is in Edge of Tomorrow, or Live, Die, Repeat, of what happened in the previous adventure? Or is Manny?
I don't know if she's totally aware, but obviously she carries something through, because in the second version, she takes the gun, she's going to rob the bank, and she turns the safety off, something she learned to do in the first round when she's robbing the bank and he tells her what to do. There's a close-up, like it's very intentional. They want us to see that. And in the third version too, where she succeeds and she's speaking to God or whatever, and she's like, please, I just need this. I think she starts to understand that she has some control over this world. And the scream too. I think that she knows it's going to work.
She screams maybe 3 times. I think maybe every sequence. I think she screams when she's on the phone with him the first time. Then she yells at her dad, shrieks at her dad, and breaks his clock with the sound of that. Yeah, because she breaks bottles the first time at home. Then it's the clock in his office at the bank. And then it's everything, basically, that's anything glass at all in the casino. When she's really bearing down like she's about to take a dump and go,
I wonder if that's really Franka Potente screaming, but it's a great scream. And yeah, she is giving her.
Well, she's got to sell that she is screaming. I always remember that scene in Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, where Kate Capshaw says, it's easy to do a great scream, and then she just goes, of course people can't see me, but she doesn't do anything. And then I think Spielberg screams for her in that little making of type of deal, meaning we're going to do this in post. Whether you scream or somebody else, we'll do it in post. So maybe it wasn't actually her screaming. Although she's very committed in this role, and it's one of the most iconic looks anybody had in the 90s. I think if you were to just see Franka Potente, even now, if she were to dress up like this, put the red wig back on. I thought I read that it was dyed hair, but I guess it was a wig.
It is dyed, but I was watching an interview with her where she talked about it. She had black hair at the time. They had to bleach it 8 times to get it light enough that it would take the red color. In order to keep it that vibrant, she couldn't wash her hair. As soon as she washed her hair even once, they would have to recolor it. So she would only wash her hair like once every 2 weeks.
Ugh.
You can see when you look closely that they have different colors in there with the main red, but they also took what she described as a Santa's beard, that fake plasticky hair, and they dyed that and put chunks of that in her hair too to give it that volume and to have those the flow, but also just make it so big and have these pieces of different colored hair poking out here and there.
Okay.
It was a bit of a 90s look, but she wears it so well.
But
and the red is so memorable, as you say.
But it's beyond the hair. It's the Doc Martens, which she found hard to run in, not surprisingly. Maybe she wasn't always wearing them when she was running, but if you saw her feet, then obviously she had to be. And then the tank top and, of course, those pants. I thought they were hospital pants, but similar looking as far as color goes. Okay, so I know you've seen this movie many times, and you're the one that said we were going to do it maybe 2 months ago at some point this year. I hadn't planned to do it, but then people were talking about it back then because its anniversary over here, at least, is, what I say, June? Yeah. So we're
and they're doing like a big 4K release as well.
Well, they did, didn't they?
Yes, that's right.
Already they did, yeah. So we're a little bit late to the party, but we're covering it now here in, when is it, August? Time has no meaning at all. So what do you think of Run, Lola Run, or Lola Rent, which just means Lola Runs in German?
I was 20 and in film school when it came out, and it just reflected everything that was new and exciting in cinema to me. It came on the vanguard of films that were really embracing new technologies and editing and mixing mediums, and the music is so 90s too. It was cool to me. The music, the fashion, it's so punk, So it's hard for me to separate myself from that imprint and look at this film objectively. But all that to say, I still really love it. I think it's nearly perfect.
Oh, okay.
I have a lot of nice things to say about it.
I wouldn't say perfect, but it was cool to see it again. I don't care if it's dated. I'm getting past that old man thing. I don't really get called an old man by people. I'm sure I would be.
No, but you have to kind of imagine what somebody who's young, who's 20 years old now, would watch this film, and would they have access to the cultural place that we were in when we saw it? I don't know if those things will translate now the way that they were meaningful to us then.
Okay, fine. I mentioned the iconic look, and of course you can't forget the tattoos too. The stomach tattoo, she's got a shoulder tattoo. That was not common back then, that women especially had tattoos, and multiple ones at that. Now almost everybody seems to have one, whether you're a regular person or a star or what have you. But that's part of her iconic look too. If you just saw her dress up like this, I don't know if I finished this point earlier. If you know anything about this movie, you'd know her immediately. That is Franka Potente in Run Lola Run. And then what became his friends, the Wachowskis, meaning Tykwer's friends, he works with them many times in the future. I don't know if he even knew them at this point. They make a movie with people, many people, but especially, of course, those leather outfits that they have in The Matrix. Keanu and Carrie-Anne Moss and everybody. In the span of the same year, though, in North America, they came out, and two of the more iconic movies from that time frame. I love 1999. We could cover 20, we still could cover plenty this year, I guess, but we could have covered, say, 20 or even 30 movies from 1999 this year, and we wouldn't be pushing it as far as, okay, that's enough from that year, because there's so many films. So we've covered plenty already from this year in the many years of this podcast. But at the same point, I'm not sure I'm going to watch this movie again for a while, because I enjoyed seeing it again. It's only an hour and 20 minutes long. The frenetic pace is such a key factor of this film, of course. So I definitely like it, but I'm more of a 3-star to 4 person than it sounds like you might be a 3.5 to 4-star person. Why do you think, other than the answer is because that's the movie that Tykwer wrote, but why do you think she, and then for that matter Manny almost, can reset things? She dies the first time, he dies the second time, and then it finally works. Why can that happen?
Why does it happen in Groundhog Day? I think it's almost an exercise for the audience. Hey, imagine 3 different ways this scenario could have played out. So as an audience member, do you even know that this isn't just like a choose your own adventure style?
Yeah.
Any of these 3 things could have happened. Isn't that interesting? Although, as I said already, she seems to learn from one to the other. So the idea is she is actually traveling back in time and starting back at the beginning.
There are a lot of things about this film that are cool, and we could go through the whole list, but I guess 2 of the bigger ones, the opening, when they have the Lola rent on screen, and it's all people that form that was apparently some kind of process thing that took a long time to film. But also the opening credits, she runs by and smashes them. The animated version of her, I should say. So the movie's got animation, too. Quite a few times, in fact. But then also you've got the whole thing about the soccer ball at the beginning. The ball is round. And there's all those quotes. I didn't write the quotes down, but those quotes at the very beginning of the film. And it's a philosophical voiceover about who we are and that kind of thing. I'm not even sure you need all those things, but it does help the coolness factor. What isn't cool, of course, is Manny. He's such a whimpering simp from the beginning. It's funny when they show those sequences that break up the 3 times. So there's 2 times they're in bed together. Very calm scene. It's a red filter. Scorsese and De Palma must have loved that because they lived on red filters back, especially De Palma, back in their heyday in the 70s and 80s when they were in their peak. I guess probably Tykwer's age when he made this film. And it looks like her hair is blonde or something like that in those scenes too, doesn't it? It doesn't look like that wig. I don't think it looks like that wig. With a red filter, maybe you can't tell, but it looks like it's just blonde. And of course, she's so pretty. He's a good-looking guy too. But there's some small things about it. It's not the same conversation, of course. But the first time, I believe she's laying on his arm. Yeah. And the second time, he's laying on her arm. And I read something about how somebody was speculating that maybe she doesn't really want to be with this guy anymore. And yet, look how dedicated she is to saving his life. She'll risk her own, sprinting around town. Her moped gets stolen. That happens early on. And then we see that come back around. That guy's involved in that accident. The third one, when people are getting hurt and maybe even dying. Maybe nobody actually dies in the final true storyline of this movie. But they definitely get hurt in that car accident, including her father and Mr. Meyer. And that guy in the moped ends up getting involved, and he flips over several times.
That moped is Lola's moped.
Yeah, exactly. I'm saying, yeah. You pointed out when we see, I think, the second sequence that that's the moped. Or maybe we see it before the car accident. Oh, that's right. That would be the one, of course. Because if she had the moped, this would have been a lot easier to go around.
Well, if she had the moped, none of this would have happened. Because the whole setup is that she was supposed to pick Manny up. And then they would have gone straight to the job to deliver the money. He's a bag boy for
rather than use the subway, right?
Yeah, okay. Yeah. But her moped gets lifted, and it's amazing watching this movie. Wow, there would be no movie if cell phones were in everybody's pocket. He would have just called her, and they would have sorted it out right then.
I keep mentioning The Matrix. Well, in that movie, cell phones or phones period are such a huge part of the storyline. They're antiquated-looking phones now, granted, but they use them all the time.
Well, they use pay phones all the time in The Matrix too, right?
Yeah, those too, of course. But as for Manny, he messes up the job. He's blubbering on the phone, which I can't blame him if he's going to be killed by Ronnie, but she's soothing. It is funny to watch the whole thing on the subway where you can say, what an idiot. The only reason why you're on the subway is because you have that money beside you. Why would you ever forget it on the seat? Except he's nervous because he knows he's involved with bad people and doing something illegal when he sees the cops go on the subway car. So that's why he does forget the bag. I don't know if that's sold very well, considering that's the only reason he's there in the first place. But all right, fine, I'll let that slip. But he needs 100,000 marks in 20 minutes. She ends up winning over 129,000 marks. So the very last moment of the whole film before the credits is when he says to her, what's in the bag?
Yeah.
And that's why I say he's going to blow that money that she made for them, without a doubt.
He's going to make some dumb suggestion, get rich quick scheme or something,
but it's funny to think,
it'll be gone.
It's funny to think, too, that in this movie, 20 minutes passes. In the real timeline, many things do happen, and she's involved in so much of it. These idiots cause so much havoc, especially in the third sequence. But then again, she gets in the back of the ambulance with that guy who apparently is one of the bank employees. I think you see him having a heart attack or something.
Yes.
Shortness of breath, what have you, in one of the earlier versions of the storyline. Second or first one, I forget which one it is. Because she doesn't go in the bank at all in the third one. But she takes his hand and then he revives. It's almost like she's God as well. And God just helped her out, I guess you could say, when she screamed in the casino.
Screams in the casino, yeah. She realizes she has power.
I didn't read online what the odds are that you'd get 20 in a row in roulette, but it's got to be extraordinarily unbelievable that it would ever happen. But she lets it ride and it works.
36 times 36? Or is there 38 on a roulette wheel? It's 1 in 38, because it's 1 through 36 plus 0 and double 0.
Don't you also have to pick the color, though, red or black?
No, you can bet on red, and then if it lands on red, you have 50%, I think.
I don't gamble, so I don't know.
Yeah. I'm not going to do 36 by 36, but it's like about 1 in 1,000, I guess.
Okay, so pretty...
Is that right?
Pretty high number, though.
Anyways, I hope somebody listening isn't yelling, God, she's an idiot.
The other key thing in this movie, I'm not sure it's revolutionary or anything, but I haven't seen too many movies do it, or I can't remember too many movies that did it after this, that show the butterfly effect. When she bumps into them or doesn't bump into them, where their life goes, that sound effect of the camera, that flash photography type camera. But you see these fast clips, all still frames.
Polaroid pictures.
There you go. That's what it is, yeah. Of the lady with the baby, and you see it with the guy who's on the bike who asks her out basically the first time.
Dramatically different outcomes in their lives with just a small difference in their one encounter.
So somebody wins the lottery. I think she wins the lottery in one of the futures. That woman does. The bike guy in one of the futures ends up being an addict. And I think it's him, one of the guys, anyway, gets married in the future.
In the animated sequence that starts each of the sequences, she's coming down the stairs and she encounters a man with a dog. The small differences in that encounter are like the sliding door moment that either slow her down or speed her up. So everything else happens completely differently. So her 3 outcomes are dramatically different. That carries on with every person that she encounters.
I love that notion. If you were to just go for a simple walk, you and I after this podcast, here it's a Friday night, it's going to be about 8:30 when we're done. If we just went for a walk, and your foot's going to be in trouble after all these months, we're not going to do that. But if we did, I love the butterfly effect concept. That we just bump into somebody for a second, or we meet somebody and talk to them for 2 minutes that we know on the street, and then they're 2 minutes later than they would have been. How that could change everything. How it could have led to nuclear war, or how it could have led to peace in the world had we not bumped into them, had we not gone outside, had we not done something to that bug that did something to something else.
And how many times when something big has happened to you, have you thought to yourself, I was in a bad car accident once, and I think, what if I had left
seconds later?
What if I had just decided to change lanes? That would have made the difference. If I had changed lanes earlier or later, then the whole crash wouldn't have happened, and my whole year would have been different following that. You can think about that after the big thing has happened, although we never know when the big calamity or surprise, success, or whatever, we never know when we avoided it. We never know that if we had gotten on a different elevator, I would have met someone different. I'd be married to someone else. I'd be making a movie podcast with some stranger.
Yeah. I didn't love the movie The Butterfly Effect. I thought it was okay, but I do love the concept of it. The whole concept of that phrase is, for those who don't know, a butterfly flaps its wings in one part of the world, and across the globe, it causes a tidal wave. Yeah. Not because of the wind of the wings, but the same concept as this. One little thing can change everything else.
Well, The Butterfly Effect is a pretty dour movie, as I recall. It gets really dark. Whereas this movie is fun from beginning to end throughout.
There's even funny moments.
There's funny moments. Tragic things happen, but of course they get erased and we get to try again. So there's this huge optimism to it, but it's just this relentless forward momentum, this incredible pace, really charming lead actress. I know it's a short movie, but it goes by so quickly. It really leaves you wanting more. But I think if there was any more, you'd get exhausted.
That could be true, yeah. I think you're probably right about that. The woman who plays Blinde, what is it again here? Moritz Bleibtreu. and I got a pronouncer on that, so Moritz Bleibtreu is how you say his name, apparently. But Monica is his mother, and she's the woman that's outside the phone booth that gives him the phone card. She's blind, exactly. It's not supposed to be it says mother in the storyline, but that actress is his actual mother. And I guess she's a key factor, too, because she's always outside that phone booth, and she never seems to have anything change in her life.
But she also seems to understand that something's going on. I can't remember what the moment is, but especially in the third one, she says something to Manny to make him do something different, and I'm spoiling this because I don't remember what it was, but she seems to have supernatural knowledge as well of what's going on here.
All right, by the way, I'm looking at this now and seeing that one of the women, maybe it's her, but one of the women kills herself in one of the flash forwards.
Yes, yeah. The woman with the bob in the office building.
Oh, okay.
She has two outcomes. One where she falls in love with the teller, and then they have a great S&M life.
Right, yeah.
Which is really funny, because it's just one picture of them doing S&M, and the rest is them walking through the park holding hands.
Yeah.
And they're just this really happy, wonderful couple. And then the other one, she gets in a car accident and ends up in a wheelchair, and then takes her own life.
That's right. Now, one of the dicks in the whole film, of course, is her dad. He's never nice. I guess in the third segment he's okay, but we know what he's like before that.
Because he never sees her. When you see what he does in the first one, you're like, this is a very bad person.
Well, he's Vater, or Vater, however you pronounce it in Germany, in the credits, but he's her dad, so Papa. And then Frau Hansen in the credits, Nina Petri's character. He's Herbert Knopp, the actor. But Nina Petri is... She says her name. Did I write it down? I thought I did. Where is it?
Is it possible that Vater is father in
It does
German?
mean father.
Oh, okay.
Father?
I thought you were saying like it was his name was Vader. I think it means father.
No, I learned that many years ago, that Darth Vader means Darth Father in Germany.
Oh, that's neat.
I don't think Lucas was planning on that back then, but
he should take credit for it.
Effectively name him Darth Father. Jutta is what she says her name is, the woman at the bank he's cheating on with. So in the first sequence is when he's probably the worst to her, to Lola that is. Her father tells her that he's leaving the mother, who is drinking at not even noon, and it's Jack Daniels beside her when she's on the phone.
And is flirting with somebody on the phone, too. Yeah. I'm married, too.
So maybe she's cheating as well as he is. And then also that she's not his daughter. But then the second sequence, we find out that Jutta Hansen, whatever, Frau Hansen, says to him, the kid I'm pregnant with is not your daughter.
Yeah, and everything is so different depending on how much information she can tell him before she's interrupted by either Lola or it's the phone call that his client, the family friend or whatever, is there.
Yeah, and then in the third sequence, of course, Mr. Meyer, who runs into the guys who are not the drug dealers, or are they drug, whatever, Ronnie and his guys, whatever they're
criminals,
the criminals. That's not them. People point that out online that, oh my God, did he run into them? Which would have been, I guess, fitting. But they're just separate guys who look like they're going to mess him up. But he doesn't hit them the third time, and he does pick up the father, and they get in the car accident. So he at least has a worse outcome at that. He probably should have been, well, then again, who knows what they did to him when he accidentally ran into their car because of Lola getting in the way by jumping over his car.
There's also this implication that the car accident must be fated, that there's no way to avoid it no matter what, because no matter what happens, he just keeps running into the same car, even if it's in a different part of the city.
All right, they're part of that car accident too, aren't they?
Yes, the same guys in the car accident.
But also it's the...
But it's because the moped guy swerves, distracts everybody, so it's not his fault anymore. It's kind of Lola's fault the first place. Really, he's just not paying attention because he's distracted by Lola. This time, everybody's distracted by the moped.
Well, these two, Lola and Manny, cause so much chaos.
Oh, yeah.
Her father's a terrible person, but he's pretty badly hurt, it looks like, in that accident. He's knocked out. Last time I think we see him in the whole film, he and Mr. Meyer are unconscious in that car accident.
It's funny to think at the end of this movie, her relationship with her father is fine. Because they never even run into each other, we have to assume that eventually he's going to find out that his girlfriend's kid is not his kid, and we know that that makes him turn against her. Does he go back to his wife? Does he go back to Lola? Does he just pretend nothing happened?
In that sequence, he doesn't tell her that you're not my daughter, and he doesn't say I'm leaving your mother and you for this woman. So maybe he wouldn't do that. But does Lola remember him saying it the first time? And does she confront him with knowledge that she shouldn't have, that he doesn't know she has?
One of the main flaws of the film is that we don't really get to know Lola very well. As a character,
it's a shallow story.
In general, that it's shallow. But I have a counter-argument to that. It is very hyper-focused on this one goal. It's so propelled by the action instead of character. Does it need super deep character development? I would argue Lola does have an arc because she is somehow learning from her mistakes and she seems to come to understand that she has control in this environment. And I think she's a really interesting character, just starting with the context clues that were given. With her home, her dad's a manager at a bank. Presumably, they live downtown Berlin. Well, I don't know if it's downtown, but their apartment's not that nice, but you have to assume he must make really good money.
Look how far she runs, though. They can't be right downtown.
Well, I guess neither of those places could be necessarily downtown. I don't know.
I'm guessing the
Berlin
bank
anyway.
and that supermarket.
Wherever their neighborhood that they live in. I don't know if it's a nice neighborhood or not. The point being, he ought to have money
Yeah.
with a job like that. And yet she seems to have this very...
Mediocre
punk.
place at best, yeah.
She just seems very working class. So there's this curiosity there. And then just her look is so interesting. Plus, what is she doing with this drip? God, Manny is the worst. We don't get to find out what really happens with them. And if those little hints that maybe she's not going to stay with him, maybe she understands that he is not worth this level of devotion from her. She cares about saving his life, but does she really want to stay with him? We didn't really get to see the end of that.
Maybe the answer to what's in the bag is, oh, nothing, my laundry. Why share it with him?
Exactly.
Why would you share it with money with somebody who's going to blow it?
My mom asked me to pick up shampoo, so 3 times as it happens.
I'm very sweaty because I ran because I felt like it.
Yeah, that's a good point. Maybe she doesn't even tell him about the money. We also just learn about her sheer determination. She's such a force of nature. I think it makes her an incredible character and maybe more interesting for the mystery of it, because I feel like the character's there, but the movie's like, we don't have time to tell you about all the backstory. That's not what this movie's about. And I wonder if part of the disconnect is if audiences are just, especially in the 90s, if audiences were really primed to expect something much more thoughtful and deep and nuanced because it's German. If this had been made in Hollywood, the audience would find it sophisticated. They would find it cool. They wouldn't be like, where's the depth? Where's the philosophy? But when it's a foreign film, we are expecting something a little more nuanced.
Okay. Probably more so if it was French, but I get your point. Another hint that her dad's not a great guy or not somebody that's that close to her, although I guess he lives with them because he says, I'm going to leave you and your mother. Not that I have or that I'm going to stay away because I've already been gone. It's I'm going to. But it would be that when she thinks about who she can go to for money, he's not the first person, but he should be. A, because he's her dad, and she's probably in her 20s at the most, maybe even a teenager. I'm not sure we ever learned Manny and Lola's ages, but they're young in any case. She lives at home. But why isn't he the first person when he has access to money through a bank and has plenty of money probably, as you said, but also it's her dad? So
he goes through that really...
They can't be that close.
It's that really cool scene where there's like the Rolodex of her going through her head of everyone she knows. He's in there, and you can just see her ruling out literally everybody else. You know it's because he's the only person that might have access to the money, but it's maybe no surprise to her that he doesn't help her out.
In the second sequence, she robs the bank with him at gunpoint, too. Him not reacting at all is perfect. You could do that scene a lot of ways, but Herbert Knopp in the bank robbery scene is probably the best he is in the whole film. He's pretty good in the first sequence when he's such a savage jerk to her as well, what he says to her. And he doesn't have that much to do in the third one, I guess. But that second one, when he just sits there, I would say moderately contemptuous look on his face, but you can't really entirely read what he's got in his face. But
and he's already crestfallen because that's the one version of events where he learns that the baby isn't his.
Right. And if she's not his daughter, which I guess is true, meaning Lola's not his daughter.
And he has regrets about pretending that she is his daughter.
So he doesn't really love her like he probably should in the first place, although if he raised her, she is his daughter, just not biologically.
But the fact that he doesn't see her that way, there's not a lot of love between this mother and father. I don't really know that there's a lot of love with her and her mother. When they briefly show her mother, you're not seeing a real stand-up lady there.
Every time we see the mother, it's the exact same sequence. They only had to film her one time. I don't think it ever changes at all.
No, it's precisely
But she tells
the same.
her to get something.
Shampoo.
Shampoo, that's it, right?
That's why I said shampoo in the bag.
Oh, right, of course. Nice tie-in. But in the second sequence, one of the best laughs in the whole film, I never saw this in the big screen, but I'm sure it was a true laugh-out-loud moment in the theaters. And it was for us, too. But only 2 people, not going to be the same kind of laugh, which is when she comes out of the bank with the money that she's just stolen. She belongs in jail for this as much as we root for her to help her boyfriend. But the cops think she's just a woman that got out of the bank. Get out of the way, kid! And so she gets away as the bank robber. That's a fun moment, too. We'll probably come back to the storyline elements before the whole podcast is done, but moving on to the style of it, the painting of Kim Novak on the wall was just because Tykwer said the wall of that casino is so boring, so the production designer apparently painted that in no time whatsoever.
15 minutes!
And that also plays into the spiral theme, which is also a theme in Vertigo, the spiraling thing. I'm not sure Vertigo has a ton of relevance beyond that.
It could just be little homages he sticks in like a
smaller
movie, because they certainly don't see Vertigo in this film.
Well, there's animation in this movie, and there's animation in that, which was very unusual for the 50s to do. This movie has almost everything. This play has everything. This movie has almost everything, including, not overdone, but quite a bit of animation.
Animation, most of it is shot on film. And the sequences that Lola's not in are all shot on video. One of
looks
the films
terrible, too.
It looks bad. This is one of the films in the late 90s where they experimented with shooting on digital video. Those cameras are starting to get really small, and it was becoming much, much cheaper to shoot that way.
28 Days Later looks like a masterpiece compared to this.
28 Days Later also looks pretty terrible.
But better than this.
Better than this.
This movie generally looks pretty good.
Another great example from the same time period, Dancer in the Dark. A movie where they shot on digital just to take advantage of how small those cameras were getting. It was a new technology in the 90s. Also playing around with the other new technology, which we've talked about a lot before, especially when we covered City of God, which was non-linear editing, which at this point was officially affordable for filmmakers to use. Not physically cutting the film and taping it back together, being able to really play and experiment. It wouldn't cost you any time, and hard drive space was cheap enough that you could just do whatever you wanted. And you got films like this and City of God, Trainspotting, probably another one, The Lie Me, taking advantage of new technology. It was an exciting time, the 90s, the late 90s especially, where it felt like these things were making film more democratic and making it easier to really play around and do things that were new and exciting. It didn't last forever, but this was a boom for that style.
I love the 70s like everyone else who loves the 70s do when it comes to filmmaking, but the 90s to me are underrated. I don't think the 90s get nearly enough credit. There are at least 2, maybe even 3 years in the 90s, I think, or maybe even 4, that are among my favorites ever. 1999 might be, and 1995 also, are in the top 5. I've never ranked the years of movies, but those 2 would be my top 5, I think, of all time. But 98 was great, 94 was great. Now, granted, I was in my, not quite 20s when the decade started, but I was in my 20s for most of the decade. So I guess I'm a little biased, but I think that's also a fair thing. Well, for me, it's fair to say. It was a great decade for film, and this is a great year for film.
That was just when we were young and impressionable, old enough to start really understanding movies in a more mature way, but young enough that stuff that was zeitgeisty and current was going to be made for us. Another really exciting thing that was happening all through the 80s and 90s was music videos. And of course, people our parents' age and film critics who were working at the time would disparage it and turn their noses up. But part of the reason I love this movie could be because I adore music videos. I was obsessed with them growing up. I watched Much Music, which is the Canadian MTV, obsessively as a teen. And then I worked there in my 20s and 30s. And when I went to college, one of my dreams was I wanted to edit music videos until I discovered there's very little money in it. But I respect the music video aesthetic, and it was a very common complaint amongst the olds that movies and TV shows were all looking like music videos. What's this? It's just a music video. Much like now that we're the olds, we might complain that the TikTok aesthetic is spoiling media. And I do kind of feel that way and turn my nose up when I see things that have that really crappy look or it's all sped up and captions on stuff. I'm like, this is a cinema.
True, but there's a lot of creative people on TikTok. And
yeah.
Some of them are, I don't know about geniuses, but maybe close to it at least.
Yeah, we've got to open our minds and be exciting about new developments in technology. And you want to talk about democratizing. It's a whole new medium in its own, but
anybody could do it.
Literally anybody could do it.
I just opened up 1999. Well, I have an entire folder of every movie, file, I should say, of every movie I've ever seen, but I went down to 1999. I'll read you my top 10 list, my honorable mentions, and I'm sure I'm going to leave out at least 10 movies, if not 20. That if anybody else looking up 1999 would say, how do you not have that in there? But here's my top 10. Number 1 would be Galaxy Quest if I did it over again, but it's only my honorable mentions. I'll warn you right now. But anyway, here it was. So 1 to 10 was The Insider, Toy Story 2, American Beauty, The Matrix, Being John Malkovich, Bringing Out the Dead, Bowfinger, Eyes Wide Shut, The Green Mile, and Election. My honorable mentions were American Movie, Dogma, Fight Club, Galaxy Quest, The Iron Giant, Magnolia, October Sky, South Park, Bigger, Longer, and Uncut, The Straight Story, and Three Kings. And I probably left out at least 10 more movies from that year that were awesome. But what a year for film is my point there. And did I even say Run Lola Run, which I would say is in the top 30, but I didn't put it in the top 20. Oh, one thing we didn't talk about story-wise, by the way, is that Manny pulls a gun. Of course, he always has the gun in his waistband in every storyline, of the 3 storylines. But he pulls the gun on the bum when he sees him on the bike that the bum had bought from the bike guy who offered to sell the bike to Lola earlier. So he gets the money. That's an interesting element there, too, that he doesn't kill the guy. In fact, he gives him the gun, but the bum could have just shot him dead or said, if he'd taken the bullets out and said, here, you have this gun, but you got to go buy your own bullets or find your own bullets at least, that'd be one thing. But the guy could have killed him.
There's 100,000 marks in that bag. The bum is stupid himself for not just turning the gun back on Manny and being like, all right, give me the bag back, you dum-dum.
It's funny you say that, by the way. I've done it a few times in this, too. One of my favorite line reads of all time is just the way she says that.
Manny!
Well, no, that too. That's good too. But I mean, I think it's the first one when she goes to her dad and he says, "Who? What do you need the money for?" Maddie. The way she says that, I'm like, how do you forget my boyfriend? Is the tone. But Maddie. I'm probably not doing it very well. I'll just highlight 4 actors in this cast. I guess 5 with the narrator, who was known for narrating German fairy tales, by the way. Hans Petsch, I guess is his name. But Franka Potente, we already said she was in the first 2 Bourne films and very good and such good chemistry with Damon. If we ever found out those 2 were doing it in those movies, I would have certainly believed it. She was also in The Conjuring 2, which did we watch together or I watched by myself after we covered the first one last year?
I don't think I've seen it.
Oh, I watched it.
Do you think you watched by yourself?
So I watched it by myself then. I forget who she is in that movie, though. But apparently she also sang the song we hear, and it's almost this notion of what she's saying to herself. I think it's in the 3rd sequence. There's a song, and I guess she's saying the lyrics.
I wish
too.
I was a hunter. There's a music video, accompanying music video, and I watched it.
Makes sense.
The actor who plays her father is also in it.
Okay. Apparently Potente was a smoker and wasn't in very good shape. She looks like she's in good shape, but she thought she wasn't. And it was, like I said before, hard to run those docks. So this was not an easy thing to shoot.
She makes it look easy.
But she's so iconic looking. I'm going to skip ahead actually to what happens next because it's going to fit in with that theme of the running. What happens next in Run Lola Run? Well, we don't know about that bag thing, but they remake the movie with Tom Cruise in the role of Lola because he must have been so jealous that she gets to run for most of the movie. But what really happens next is that Manny probably only has a few days left to live. He's going to screw up another assignment with Ronnie. Lola had the magic touch this day, but can she keep repeating it? I don't know if she can.
I feel like she's going to break his heart sometime soon.
Moritz Bleibtreu was in Munich for Spielberg quite a few years later. World War Z and the Fifth Estate, the one about, what's his name?
Snowden?
No, the other guy. What's his name? House Arrest.
Julian Assange.
That's it. Assange, yeah, because it's Cumberbatch, I think the place.
Oh, it is, too.
Herbert, I guess it's Knaup, Knaup, was in The Lives of Others, the Oscar-winning Best Foreign Language Film, they still called it back then, and also the Oscar-winning for Best Foreign Language Film back then, Nowhere in Africa, which was a couple years after this. And Nina Petri, who's Frau Hansen, which is, I guess, Jutta, has 130 plus credits online, but I didn't recognize anything else. Or if I did, I didn't write them down. Nothing else that she's been in there I recognize. So TykWer directed many things, including The Princess and the Warrior with Franka Potente, and also The International, which, like I said before, was a splat on Rotten Tomatoes. And he, I think, co-directed Cloud Atlas with the Wachowskis, and he's known them for a long time and worked with them several times. The producers, Stefan Arndt, Gebhard Henke, and Andreas Schreitmuller. Arndt worked on Amour and also Cloud Atlas. Henke worked on The Princess and the Warrior for TykWer, of course, and Antichrist, the
Lars von Trier.
Von Trier movie, yeah. And Schreitmuller worked on The Lives of Others, so he obviously saw Herbert Knaup at least once more in his career. The movie's 185-1. We watched the Blu-ray. It looks pretty good, I think, even though we don't have the 4K Blu-ray. Frank, I guess it's Griebe or Griebe, Griebe. He shot Heaven for TykWer, Cloud Atlas, and A Hologram for the King, which is also Tom TykWer, and I think that's Tom Hanks that's the star of that movie.
It is?
I believe. Okay, yeah. The editor, who I think was maybe worthy of an Oscar for this, even though it's over-edited, but in a great way. Mathilde Bonnefoy won an Oscar for Citizen 4, I think the documentary Oscar, but she was in...
Snowden.
Is it Snowden? It is, isn't it? Yeah.
We're mixing up our whistleblowers.
Yeah. But she was part of the team that won the Oscar for that, and she did other movies with TykWer as an editor. And he was one of the composers, along with Reinhold Heil. It is spelled like Heil! And Johnny Klimek. Heil's been TykWer's guy, I think, all along, and so is Klimek, who also worked with the Wachowskis on at least several projects, I believe. I guess we've already said we think the movie looks pretty good, and our Blu-ray looks pretty good, too. I thought it was going to be crappier than it was, but no, it looked good. A Blu-ray should look good, but sometimes they just don't. Sometimes they don't really do anything to it at all, and we didn't even see the best version of it that's out there now.
And a note about the editing. Another thing that nonlinear editing makes it much easier to do is to cut things to music. I think people think this kind of editing is easy, and I guess it can be. You can make something look passable easily with this style of editing, but this film is incredibly well edited. It deserves credit for that.
I think so, too. I think it was nomination worthy. And we're saying it looked pretty snazzy as well, and she is so iconic. Mm-hmm. But even though it's not Bleibtreu's fault, his character is not worthy of her working this hard to save him. Okay, then last thoughts on a pretty cool movie from 1999, 1980 for German, Run Lola Run.
So this film is definitely a time capsule, but it makes the case for a film really embracing its time and place and making something great right now for this moment and still being a great work of art.
She's the man for her time and place. She fits right in there.
She is cool as it gets, man.
And if I can quote Big Lebowski, I'll also do that too. I like your style, dude. The movie's fairly shallow, given the nature of the story and how little time we get to know what makes these people tick. But it does pack a bit of a wallop. Those sequences in the bed, when they're just having their pillow talk, are pretty important. This young woman obviously has a crappy father and a mother who's drinking Jack Daniels before noon, but she's in love with Manny, and she'll clearly do whatever it takes to help him. She cares, so we care. And of course, it doesn't hurt that this thing was so cool. So that was how we saw Run Lola Run, or Lola Runs, or Lola Rent. Next week, we'll be wrapping up our summer of podcasting, the last podcast of August already, with a gab about this year's big Academy Awards winner. We finally get to it. Oppenheimer, one of Bev's favorites. I'll say right now, which I'm sure I'm going to say next week, I wish I just recorded your rant when we went to the keg the night you saw it by yourself. I saw it about a week later. That would be the podcast. I don't need to say anything. See if you can recreate some of those things. The coming attractions.
I'll try to go a little easy on it.
You were not a fan, but it was amusing to hear you rip on it so much. The coming attractions trivia for Oppenheimer. There are only 2 films made in the 21st century that have won more Oscars than the 7 that Oppenheimer won. What are those 2 motion pictures? I can always go back to the Oscars as a good piece of trivia. That's a better question than some of the ones I've had lately in the coming attractions section.
So for the answer to that question, check out next week's podcast about Oppenheimer. You already know how to find us, but let me remind you to favorite or subscribe wherever you listen, which is also where you can find our archive of hundreds of episodes that are available for free. While you're there, leave us a rating and a review. That is a great way to support us. You can reach us on Twitter. I'm at Bev Ellis Ellis, and Ryan is at MovieThemed51. You can also reach us by email, haveyouvseenseenpodcast@gmail.com, and you can find our podcast on YouTube. Our channel is at HYES Ellis. And to enjoy freshly roasted premium coffee delivered straight to you in Canada or the US, please go to sparkplug.coffee/HYES and enjoy a 20% discount.
Feel like going for a little run? I know you don't because you can't even really walk that well right now, but...
Give me another couple months. Don't lose 100,000 marks for the next 2 months, please.
Betty! Maddie!
And cut.